viewer discretion advised, because what you're about to see is some of the clips from, as we said, one of the most sacrilegious things we've ever seen in a church in the United States. We show these because it's important for you to understand how bad this really was. Hello, my friends, and welcome to this episode of Faith and Reason, where we are going to unpack one of the most controversial things that has ever happened in the church in the United States, a funeral, or a funeral service anyway, at the New York City Cathedral for a trans activist, and not just any trans activist, an atheist trans activist who is as out and loud and proud of it as you can ever imagine. Not only that, the funeral service was also just an absolute travesty, with some of the lectors being a man in drag or transgender man, whoever knows, but it's a person who came up in a dress and long hair and spoke, as of course, with a man's accent, and then other drag queens. But probably the worst of the worst was this Saint Cecilia, the whore, and everything else. The deceased's name was Cecilia Gentili. We're going to unpack all of that. Also, more about Freemasonry in the Vatican, not about the members themselves, but about them coming to relationship with the Vatican, and the Vatican, even Vatican people speaking to it. All that and much more on this episode of Faith and Reason. Stay tuned. Let's begin, fathers, we always do, with a short prayer from yourself.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Liz, tell us what happened in New York City. What in the world was that?
Last Thursday, there was a funeral service for a prominent transgender activist, a man who was born in Argentina, a quote-unquote sex worker at some point. He passed away at age 52. His name was Cecilia Gentili. Apparently, the church, the rectory at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, the iconic church in America, was unaware of who this person was. Hard to believe, because I Googled, one Google click, and up Cecilia Gentili came up, obviously well known. And anyway, it was a complete and total scandalous, the most, in my mind, in watching the video, it was the insult of insult to the Catholic Church, challenging our faith, the dignity, the tenets of our faith, the respect that our saints, our Blessed Mother, deserve. And it was all mocked at this really free-for-all at St. Patrick's. And there's been a lot happening. It's really been an earthquake in the Catholic Church in the United States. Cardinal Dolan did not respond until almost a week later on a radio podcast that he was on. There must have been just a huge protest by Catholics in St. Patrick's Cathedral, the parishioners, because nearly immediately there was a response from the cathedral saying it was sacrilegious, it was a scandal. They apologized for it, and that there was a massive reparation. They also claimed that they did not know who this person was, who was a committed atheist. The church says you can't give a funeral service to a committed atheist. That actually has changed, because there was an additional statements that said they knew the night before who this Gentili was. Nevertheless, the pictures of the people who attended this, there was a man who attended the service in a thong. There was really obscene clothing, performances at the event. And Cardinal Dolan responded just this week by saying he had no idea, that he thought that the priest who handled it, he was a hero. And I think we'll look at some of the the clips from that, and you can determine whether or not this Father Doherty was in fact a hero or whether he was really contributing to the circus atmosphere at St. Patrick's.
Indeed. Let's take a look at some of those clips. The first I'd like to show you is, and I'm sorry, let's say viewer discretion advised, because what you're about to see is some of the clips from, as we said, one of the most sacrilegious things we've ever seen in a church in the United States. And we show these because it's important for you to understand how bad this really was. Here is the priest calling up the lectors, and you can see as soon as they start reading what this is.
A reading from the first letter of St. John. Beloved, see what love the Father has bestowed upon us, that we may be called the children of God. Yet so we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it does not know him. Beloved, we are God's children now. What we shall be has not been revealed. We do know that it is revealed. We shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
And then, although I hate to show you this, this is them from the pulpit again, calling out and making these horrific statements with whore, St. Cecilia, as Liz pointed out to me the other day. St. Cecilia, in addition to being the patron saint of music, is the patron saint of purity. And this is what they said.
This whore, this great whore, Saint Cecilia, mother of all whores, today we say, we see you soon, and that you will give us the strength, the courage to continue your legacy.
And we also have with us today to come onto the show, just briefly, Wendy Long. Introduce us to Wendy Long, if you would.
Yes, Wendy Long is a very prominent, well-known, highly respected attorney. She's from New York, the East Coast, a committed Catholic, and she made it her solemn duty to attend a 5 o'clock Mass where Cardinal Dolan was appearing in New York, and asked him specifically about what went on at St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Wendy Long was actually able to speak with the Cardinal about it. Wendy, why don't you tell us what you heard from the Cardinal?
Certainly. Very nice to be with you. Last Saturday, I knew there had been an announced Mass at a local parish near one of our family homes in New York and New Rochelle, Parish of the Blessed Sacrament. There had been an announcement that Cardinal Dolan was coming to celebrate Mass there, along with some other local parishes to celebrate an anniversary of churches there in the parish. And it was a 5 p.m. Saturday vigil Mass. And I wouldn't have ordinarily attended that Mass, but I decided to go because I thought if there was an opportunity, so many of my friends and I had been really scandalized by the transgender funeral that occurred in St. Patrick's Cathedral, and so little had been said from the Archdiocese. I wanted to ask the Cardinal in person about what was being done and what his view was on it, since he hadn't spoken out. So after the Mass was concluded, he was standing in the nave of the church greeting well-wishers, and there was a big long line of people wanting to take pictures with him and so forth. And I didn't think that was really the appropriate place. I never like socializing in the church anyway after Mass. It always bothers me. So I had gone outside in front to wait for him, to ask him some questions after he exited so as not to be doing that inside, but he never came out. So I went back in and got sort of at the end of the line. And then when it came my turn to speak with him, I asked Cardinal Dolan, I said, first of all, thank you for coming here. And then I said, when is the Mass of reparation for that horrible sacrilege and blasphemy and disrespect that happened at this funeral? And he leaned over and whispered in my ear, which I thought was kind of strange. I thought, well, why is he doing this? And so he whispered in my ear and said, I think it's already happened. And they did it on the QT so as not to have more protesters. But just the whole answer to me seemed incredibly bizarre. I almost didn't know what to say. First, the fact that he was whispering it. And second, the fact that this thing was very public. It was all over the news. I thought the reparations should be public too. And there were I had so many friends who wanted to participate and assist at that Mass and be there. And then I said something to the effect of, oh, well, I think a lot of people are going to be very wounded by that because they were looking forward to, and he sort of scolded me. He said, well, every Mass is a Mass of reparation. That took, of course it is, but that took me a little bit aback too. And I didn't want to argue with him, but it's just, his responses seemed so strange to me. And then I moved on and I said, well, what about the priest who presided over this whole thing, Father Doherty? And I was about to ask specific questions, such as he referred to the deceased, who was a man, as a she. He said, he gave assurances that this person was in heaven. I thought that was weird, but I didn't even get to that because I said, what about Father Doherty? And he cut me off and said, he's a hero. And I said, what? He said, yes, he's a hero. He stopped the Mass. And I said, no, and I'd forgotten it wasn't a Mass. It was just a service, but he said he stopped the Mass. And I said, no, he didn't. I said, then I became a little argumentative and I said, he didn't stop it. It went on. I said, I watched the whole thing. It was horrendous. And he said, well, then it went on without him. And he turned away from me and started posing for pictures with kids. And I couldn't ask any more questions.
Well, obviously from the video testimony, it didn't go on without him. He was very much part of it.
I heard when I was watching a clip of it that somebody came up to the priest and said, "You're to go on without a Mass," which I've been in that situation, not as dramatic as that one was, but I've been in a situation where I realized that of the 200 people at the funeral Mass, there was not one practicing Catholic.
Sure.
And when you say the Lord be with you and people stare at you like you've got 10 heads, like what, you know that you're now with people who are practicing Catholics. So I have not gone out with the Mass. I simply do a funeral service, right? But in this case, you're dealing with somebody who is publicly an atheist, publicly and proudly a prostitute. And I mean, the whole thing is absurd. It's absurd. Why do you think the Cardinal would be afraid to have a Mass of reparation, if not an exorcism? Why would that be a fear of his, that it be known?
When he said so that the protesters wouldn't come, I thought, well, I mean, first of all, I'm sure the NYPD and all sorts of private security forces will be more than happy to provide security at that Mass.
You can be sure of it.
By the way, I was just remembering on the election night of 2020, when there had been various threats of protests and violence, Cardinal Dolan then arranged for tons of private security at every parish in New York to look after every parish, or maybe it wasn't everyone, but it was many of them, in case there were any disruptions on election night. I thought, well, if you'll do it for that, why in the world wouldn't you do it for this?
Really?
Wendy, I wanted to ask you, is your sense of that this is the LGBT coup d'etat of the church, that they're really pushing their agenda on the Catholic Church, and they chose the most iconic, cathedral in the United States?
It sort of feels that way. I don't know any more than anyone about that, but it certainly felt that way. And the level of shock and sorrow and scandal that it caused certainly would be commensurate with that. And I would say what what makes it even worse to me is the cover-up from the Archdiocese feels almost as bad as the initial crime, because I feel like we're all, as the faithful, being gaslit to say, oh, every mass is a mass of reparation. This was all done, and the priest is a hero, and why don't you just go on about your way? And I mean, but then I heard an interview that Cardinal Dolan did in the last day or two, and he was sort of chuckling and said, well, we don't do FBI background checks. And I thought, that's not funny. And I feel like there's all these straw men and all these red herrings saying we don't do FBI background checks for funerals. And then his spokesman, Mr. Zwilling, said something like, I'm quite certain everyone who's had a funeral at St. Patrick's is a sinner. Well, I mean, again, that's sort of gaslighting us, and it's a red herring. That's not the point.
Yeah. No, one click on Google, and they would have found out who Mr. Gentili was. And there was also indications in some of the statements that they knew the night before the service that this was a prominent transgender activist. But, this gaslighting, we're not entitled to uphold the faith and express our shock and dismay.
I'm not even going to call them a congregation when these people filed into the St. Patrick's Cathedral. And Father Doherty looked out at them, and the very first thing he said was, oh, we've never had people this turned out since Easter, sort of applauding fishnets and their incredibly inappropriate attire and the way they were conducting themselves. And
exactly. In fact, let's take a look at that clip right now. You will see that Father Doherty is not only not perturbed, but he's encouraging them. He gives this little joke, and they give him a standing ovation. Watch this.
Welcome to St. Patrick's Cathedral. Except on Easter Sunday, we don't really have a crowd that is this well turned out,
Jack, you haven't said anything yet on this. What's your take on the situation?
Well, obviously it's an abomination. I think the biggest issue is just who gets to call up the church 2 days before and have them open St. Patrick's Cathedral for a funeral mass. I mean, I doubt that there are very many prominent Catholics in New York City who attended mass every Sunday who would get that great honor. And yet they did it for this, and now they said they were confused. I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered about who made these decisions and why. I think it's tragic for Cardinal Dolan to describe Father Doherty as a hero. A hero would have been the guy who pushed them out of the church and shut the doors. He's being lauded for this behavior. I thought one of the most telling things was Father Doherty saying that this is the largest turnout that we've had since Easter. That says a lot more about Father Doherty than it says about anything else, doesn't it? If he has the pulpit in the greatest Catholic church in America and he can't fill the pews, what's the problem?
Well, he also said they were well turned out, meaning all these feathers and leathers and thongs were appropriate, for a church that has the first-class relics of all 12 apostles, the first-class relic of St. Patrick's, and St. Rose of Lima and St. Francis of Assisi. And also, my question was, Father, what's your sense of? I'm afraid that the Holy Eucharist was in the tabernacle during that abomination.
The only thing I found relief in was that at a certain point at the beginning of the Mass, I believe, someone from the rectory of St. Patrick's went up and told Father that not to do a Mass, to not to do a Mass. He said that explicitly. So the Mass itself was canceled. which is a good thing. It's a good thing. I've had some of those circumstances also in New York when I was pastor there. You would get a congregation of people, and you knew that not one of them was a practicing Catholic, and so I didn't do a mass. Now that's a wonderful thing. So there wasn't a further sacrilege of desecrating the Holy Eucharist, because you could be sure that all of those characters yesterday or the day before would have gone up to receive Holy Communion and made a mockery of that also. You can be sure of that. This whole funeral could have taken place at the Greyhound bus station on 42nd Street. I mean, it really could have. That's it. Except that these people like to have a theatrical background to do their production, and that's what St. Patrick's was. They used St. Patrick's as a theatrical background. What they said, I couldn't believe my ears. I could not believe my ears. It reminded me an awful lot of the Freemasons, of the Freemason revolutionaries during the French Revolution, who knocked down the statue of our Blessed Mother and put up a prostitute, calling her reason in Notre Dame Cathedral. And to see people's reaction to that, I'll just say this, just so you can understand where I'm coming from. I refuse to go back into St. Peter's Basilica until it's reconsecrated after the Pachamama scandal, because it's desecrated. I'm serious, it is. There should be a ceremony, and it should be, you know what? It should be publicized. It should be made very public that this is what's happening, so that people can see the respect that we have or are supposed to have for the Blessed Sacrament or holy places and holy objects. It was outrageous, outlandish, a sacrilege, blasphemy, and it's not being treated that way. I wonder why.
Very salient point that you made, Jack, is that all sorts of people would want to have a funeral service at the New York Cathedral, St. Patrick's, and they don't get to. And this was permitted. Unbelievable. And then from the video that we just watched together, you can see Father was all into it. And yet that same Father Doherty is called by Cardinal Dolan a hero for switching it from the funeral mass to a funeral service. Yet he's all into it. And then finally, you have, even now, even once this has been done, this horrible sacrilege has taken place, Cardinal Dolan still backing the priests, and even in public saying how they're great. And he responds to criticism saying, I don't know why people believe the secular media. We believe our eyes. Exactly. And the last thing, and we have this situation where now the trans activists themselves, they're complaining because they found out, it was switched from a funeral mass to a service. We wanted the mass. They want the desecration. And they're now asking themselves for an apology from the church for not going ahead with the mass. Liz, can you have some details for us there?
Ironically, this very week, Cardinal McElroy of San Diego stated at the LA Religious Education Conference that, quote, we have a rigorous obligation to protect LGBT persons, unquote. I mean, he says this at the time this scandal is exploding in New York. And I've heard, I can't tell you how many people have called me and said, we've got to have public rosary rallies. We have to have a public reparation. People are so offended. And this was a strategic attack at the heart of the Catholic faith in America. The attendees at the Gentili funeral displayed no decorum, no respect, and this is nothing short of a political pep rally to promote LGBT radical ideology by mocking our saints and our tenets. And do the cardinals and the bishops of the American church really think that for one New York minute that parents and families will darken the doors of a church that allows this kind of scandalous circus? And no, we're not going to tolerate or placate. These are poor, traumatized souls. We all understand it. But they are hell-bent on imposing their ideology and pathology on society, on the church, and on children. And, Cardinal Dolan, let's be honest, has looked the other way for years. He supported this community with a wink, wink at great cost to the integrity of the faith. Lest we forget the New York City St. Patrick's Day scandal parade back in 2015, where the LGBT community insisted on its participation, or the 10 or more parishes in the Archdiocese of New York, which are primarily gay friendly. This is all coming home to roost. Cardinal Dolan, you cannot straddle the fence. In case you haven't noticed, these radicals do not care about our church, about our faith, about our liturgy, or our rituals. And, with Gentili being an avowed atheist, this is, this to me is, another insult on top of another insult. And I think we need to have a public, publicized reparation mass at St. Patrick's and at many parishes throughout the United States. This I lay at the feet of Bergoglio, Father Martin, Fernandez. This is the logical result of fiducia supplicans. And inclusivity, they're going to take, the transgender activists are going to take Francis at his word. You want inclusivity? This is our inclusivity, folks. We're going to dress and act and force our agenda inside a hallowed space. So, I'm sure the 12 apostles are, in shock, as is St. Patrick. And, my little parish here in the Midwest is named St. Patrick's. And like St. Patrick's Cathedral, it was built on the back of 4 Irish immigrants who loved the Catholic Church.
Here's a point for you, Liz. What you mentioned is so important, because think about this. Funerals are not private. They are public. The church is open. And that church, as you said, housed the relics of the 12 apostles. Everybody knows that it's actually an act of mercy to attend a funeral and to pray for the departed, the soul of the departed person. Imagine if there's good, holy Catholic families who might have been in the church to reverence the relics of the apostles, to reverence the relics of St. Patrick himself. Imagine had they had been in there and thought, oh, it's a funeral service. Well, we'll stay, kids, and we'll pray for the repose of the soul. And then they see this circus go on, and they see Father Doherty acting with the circus, enjoying the circus, getting a standing ovation for his joking at this grave sacrilege, this unthinkable offense to our Lord. It's impossible. And in case anyone out there was thinking, oh, Liz is just exaggerating with, she said there's 10 gay parishes in New York. You can go look it up yourself. In fact, I did for you. So we'll add the New York City Cathedral to the list, but then get this. Right in the Manhattan area, you have Blessed Sacrament, you have Church of the Annunciation, you have Holy Name of Jesus, St. Francis de Sales, you have St. Francis of Assisi, St. Francis Xavier, Ignatius Loyola, St. Paul the Apostles, and that was just a brief that we found at LifeSite News by looking at the New Ways Ministries website, the active homosexuals for LGBT Catholics, they call themselves. It's unbelievable. And this is all going on with the knowledge of Cardinal Dolan, who supports the LGBT Catholic community in his archdiocese. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That's not the only thing, though, going on this last week. We have, in addition to that, the Freemason conference. I think that was truly stunning. What happened there, Liz?
Just a few weeks ago, the Vatican issued a statement from Father, I'm sure you're ready to, your head's exploding. Father, who's fought against Freemasonry all of his life. There was a statement by the Vatican saying that Catholics cannot become Freemasons. It's a mortal sin. There's no, just upholding the teaching of the Catholic Church. And then, this happens a lot now in the Francis Vatican. And now we've noticed that there was a major conference with Freemasonry and the Catholic Church. and it was conducted in communion with the Freemason Lodge, the leading Freemason Lodge in Italy. And among the Catholic prelates, prominent Catholic prelates, was Cardinal Coco Palmerio, who you may recall was the cardinal who was involved in the drug-fueled gay orgy in the Vatican apartments. And he's the emeritus prefect of the Vatican's Pontifical Council for Legislative Texts. Also in attendance of this Freemason conference was Milan's Cardinal Archbishop Mario Del Pini and another bishop, Bishop Antonio Stagliano, who is president of the Vatican's Pontifical Academy of Theology. And Delphini gave the opening address, and his talk was entitled Freemasonry Between Ratzinger and Bergoglio. This is the dialogue that they're talking about with the arch enemy, right, Father, of the Catholic Church. This one-day conference was billed as an important moment of dialogue that will allow religious and Freemason to freely confront each other on reconciliability and irreconcilability of Masonic values with Catholic ones. After St. Patrick's Cathedral, I thought I'd never see anything like this, but Father, I mean, you understand.
Well, Liz, you don't know whether to laugh or cry. When I'm listening to you describe just the people who met for this and the name of the conference and what it was about, it sounds like science fiction. Papa Bergoglio, to me, is dismantling the church according to his own image and likeness. If anyone thinks that you are going to dialogue with European, especially European Freemasons, and come to a nice agreement and everything's going to be fine, where do you live, on Mars? This is impossible. It's impossible. And plus, they're talking about, this is the amazing part of these talks. The church is presenting herself as having been wrong all this time and extending mercy. Now, this is amazing. This is amazing. It's absolutely amazing, especially in the 200 years that the church has defending herself from attacks constantly by Freemasonry. It's another outlandish attack on the church, and it's being led by the Vatican. It's being led by the Pope of Rome. This is amazing. I don't have words for it. I really am. I get to the point about every other day I say, that's it. This is it. You can't get more bizarre than this until tomorrow.
St. Maximilian Kolbe witnessed firsthand the Freemasons in Rome in 1970 as part of their bicentennial celebration. And they were parading signs in the Vatican. And one of the signs said, it was a banner that said, Satan must reign in the Vatican. The Pope will be his slave. And Father, I don't know, you'd know better than I, how many encyclicals were written against Freemasonry and books. I mean, your book, Murder in the 33rd Degree, really lays it all out, the Freemasons' impact on Vatican II.
This is not ancient history. Mother Pasqualina described in detail the funeral procession of Pope Pius IX from the Vatican to San Lorenzo, the Church of San Lorenzo. He insisted on being buried outside of the Vatican when he died, because he had stayed almost his entire pontificate inside the Vatican as prisoner. Freemasons met him on the bridge of the Holy Angels. And were battling to throw his casket into the Tiber River. Were it not for the students of Catholic Action, from the university students of Catholic Action, they would have done that. The Vatican bank scandal that we vaguely remember from the 1980s, 1980, 81, 82, this was all done by the Freemasons to bankrupt the Catholic Church's, the Vatican's finances, and they almost succeeded. There are men in prison still today for the crime in Italy, for the crime of Freemasonry infiltration into the Vatican Bank thing. They're in prison for the rest of their lives, those who weren't killed. How do you sit down and just talk to these people about, let's see what we have in common? What are you kidding me? This is outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. Outrageous.
Father, I said, you make a great point about European Masons. These people were behind the French Revolution.
Yes.
They were behind the Second Republic in Spain. I mean, they made up, I think, almost 40% of the legislature. Huh? When you go to Latin America, Simon Bolivar, all of these, Benito Juarez, all of these guys, Jose Marti in Cuba, all had Masonic backgrounds. And in almost every case, those revolutions were launched with an anti-clerical element. It physically attacked priests within the church and nuns and murdered them in cold blood.
The Cristero War was the Freemasons against the Catholic Church. And it was horrible. Everything that they did was horrible. And it was financed by the United States government. The United States government sent the arms and supplies down to the Freemasons in Mexico to kill the Catholic uprising. This has been going on constantly, and it is a constant war because you have two completely different ideals, and the Freemasons want the end of Catholicism. That's what they want. They want it destroyed. They want it out of the way. It was what they planned in every revolution, be it the French Revolution, the Spanish Civil War, the Mexican Civil War. Everything was based around eliminating Catholicism.
You have the Catholic Church, which is this theological body that stretches around the world, and therefore, from its opposition from time immemorial, has always seemed like this impenetrable web, right? And they want to replace that with Freemasonry. I mean, that's the objective. Let's get real.
They're doing a spectacular job, I may add.
Well, I will say the numbers in Europe are still very, very small. Freemasonry has also become, in an odd way, in the last, say, 40 years, a popular protest vehicle for the hard left in Europe, because you have to remember, Freemasonry was banned by Franco, Hitler, Pétain, Mussolini. They all got rid of it, right? It was all deemed incompatible with their systems of government. So to be a Freemason today is, shows a little more red than it did even, 100 years ago. But it's a problem, and it parades as a group of men of faith, which I think is the biggest picture.
The Freemason were just celebrating the election of Francis, that they, for months they were calling him the Pope of Dialogue. So I guess they named him as the Pope of Dialogue. Many of the St. Gallen Mafia, if not all, Father Ubi, were appointed by Cardinal Baggio, who was a noted Freemason. So you have the St. Gallen Mafia being appointed by the Freemason, and then they choose Bergoglio to sit in the seat of Peter. So, it's continued with every encyclical. The Freemasons celebrate what Francis is saying about dialogue, about intercommunion with other religions, with the common good. All that has been reaffirmed by, the big Freemason leaders and lodges throughout the world.
Unbelievable. And there's more. So do you remember how last week we told you that it was Sister Linda Procher, the nun asked by Pope Francis to come and give a talk at the Vatican, or lead a group at the Vatican considering women in the church, had said that Pope Francis is all in favor of women's ordination to the diaconate, at least. Well, there's more news on that front this week. Liz, what's new?
The Pope has appointed 6 new consultors for the upcoming Synod on Synodality, and all of them are for female diaconate or female governance, being a larger voice in the church, possibly female priest. And so it is clear that this is being telegraphed. I think it's important for all of us to pay attention to the October Synod. And interestingly, it's not a discussion that really came up in the Synod. They said they were going to talk about it in October, this upcoming October 2024. And so we see, again, the deck being stacked by Francis to promote his radical agenda. I found it very interesting. Father Jerry Murray was on EWTN's World Over, and he said female deacons would be, quote, a serious moment of heresy in the life of the church. And he claimed to say that, more and more people are talking about that Pope Francis is very much in favor of a female diaconate. And furthermore, Father Murray said that the reason it's not permitted is because the church has never done it. There's no history of female deacons receiving the sacrament of holy orders ever in the life of the church. But this is the synodal church, right? This is a synodal church, remaking of the Catholic Church, inclusion of LGBT, inclusion of Freemasonry. Is that what we're expecting? Inclusion of, changing the structure of the church and the tenets of the church. People, I think, are beginning to finally wake up and see that Francis is fulfilling his dictates from the St. Gallen Mafia.
I agree with Father Murray. He certainly knows what he's talking about. He's an excellent priest. The day that they ordained a woman to the diaconate is absolutely the formal call of schism. That it's not just a heresy; it will be the split of the Catholic Church. You can believe that. It will finally be declared. What actually we're living right now is the sort of schism. It will be declared. It will be made official.
Archbishop Vigano, right after Fiducia Supplicans, predicted that with the rest of the synod, there would be a female diaconate that would come in, that would be a female diaconate that's not a diaconate, but is a diaconate, in very much the same way as Fiducia Supplicans gave us.
Sort of like blessing unions, but not blessing unions.
Liz, you said that the Masons described the Pope as the communicator Pope, and that was how they described him. I think they got that from the Vatican press office, didn't they?
Yeah, and one really interesting thing, wasn't it? You were mentioning already, Liz, about St. Maximilian Kolbe in 1917 when he saw the Freemasons in the Vatican, but what was it that he said that pertained exactly to the Pope, that they would put, within 100 years, a Pope on the altar who, while not necessarily being a Freemason, would believe and teach all of what we believe and teach?
That's right. That's what they predicted. And if you read the Alta Vendita, the secret document by the Freemasons that was recovered by the church, found by the church, and I'm not sure which Pope, maybe Pius X or 11th, copied it, got it out to all the dioceses in many languages so that people were aware of the agenda of the Freemasons.
I believe it was Leo XIII.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not to leave you without any good news, there is some. Liz, why don't you give us that?
Well, it's nice to have a new voice in the battle with the Vatican. Jordan Peterson, the Canadian, John Henry, slammed Pope Francis's fixation on climate change and said, rightly so, that Pope Francis should be saving souls. And he talked about his fixation on climate change, and he said, that's not working. It's shallow, slamming the guitar and hippies that proliferated the church in the 60s and after Vatican II.
This is so good. Let's just play the clip because you'll see what I mean. Watch this.
When we look at the Catholic Church and its decline in recent years, less young people going, less people signing up for a religious life, and since you could say the 60s.
Well, if it's all guitar and hippies, who the hell cares?
But since Vatican II, let's say in the 60s, the church has been aiming to be more relevant, more welcoming. So what's the problem?
That's not working. It's shallow, obviously. Shallow and contemptible. It's supposed to be an invitation to the great adventure of life. What's the great adventure of life? Pick up your cross and follow me. Like, that's a hell of an invitation, but that's the invitation. And the church lost faith in that.
You think
We
the
have
church
to be
isn't-
relevant. Well, what's more relevant than that? As soon as you say that you need to be more relevant than that, what you're doing technically is putting something else above that. Well, that's not going to work, not if the original proposition was correct. And obviously the original proposition is correct. You might say, well, why obviously? Okay, well, Christ faced and triumphed over death and hell. And you might say, well, why is that relevant? And the answer is, because that's what you have to do. Right, and everyone, you're stuck with it.
So is the Catholic Church not challenging people enough
Definitely
now?
not enough, not by any stretch of the imagination. The gateway to paradise is barred by the cherubs who have swords that flame and turn every which way. Well, what does that mean? It means it's hard to get into the club, man. Anything that isn't worthy gets cut and burned away. Well, of course, that's hell, especially if you resist it. Really. And there's no sugarcoating that, and that isn't what people want anyways. Young people want an adventure. Why the hell do you think they're so concerned with saving the planet, which Pope Francis seems to be on about constantly, when he should be saving souls? That's how you save the planet, not by worshipping Gaia.
Do you think Pope Francis puts the emphasis in the wrong places sometimes?
Well, I gave you that example. I don't see, for the life of me, what the Catholic Church has to do with climate crisis. Just the formulation is wrong. The priority is wrong. You save the world one person at a time. It lacks faith in its own mission.
You know what I loved about that? He says it with such disdain, with such obvious, disdain, properly so, because this whole kind of banjo and circuses mass and the whole worship of Gaia. I loved when the EWTN host asked him about Pope Francis, and he said, yeah, the worship of Gaia, I already mentioned that example. That's just bang on. And said with the proper amount of animosity that it deserves. We all have to pray for Peterson, though, because I guess understandably so. He's finding it a hard time following his wife into converting into the church. And at this time, it's so difficult because he watches Pope Francis and he sees Pope Francis, obviously, and he knows the horrors that are going on. He's not a stupid man. It makes it very, very difficult for people who actually are intellectual enough to understand what the faith is to go for it when we have such scandal going on right from the Pope.
Peterson is a man who understands the salvation of souls. He's a psychologist. Psychology is the study of souls, of the soul. And he understands what's necessary today is to save souls. He's been in that business for all of his life. When he sees that being abandoned by the church, yes, I can understand why it would be difficult for him to even imagine becoming a Catholic today.
Yeah.
A lot of people have written me who have become Catholics in the last couple of years, and they're in crisis. New Catholics. So I understand that.
Yeah.
But he's absolutely right. The church is about the salvation of souls. That's what it's about. We've lost our way, unfortunately.
The one thing he said that I thought was very pertinent as well, he said that the church has been struggling to find relevance. And he said, pick up your cross and follow me. He said, how much more relevant can you get? And as soon as there's something that is more important than that, no matter which way it went, you've just made it secondary to the other purpose. So being relevant is more important than the simple message of pick up your cross and follow me. And I think that's been clearly the problem of the Catholic Church. You see it particularly in the portion of the church that Bergoglio comes out of in Latin America, where they've been struggling with these two disparate ideas, right? We want to be communists on the one hand and we want to be Catholics on the other. It's been a disaster. I think we need to get back to our knitting. I mean, I'm happy to say, my wingman is a woman. I am perfectly happy to sit with my rosary all day long. But there need to be people in the church who will step up and show what it means to be a vigorous leader in these issues, and not in an unkind way. I mean, Father, you said it a couple of weeks ago, the church has never been unwelcoming of sinners. In fact, that's what its doors are, why its doors are wide. I think, though, that we have to stop confusing sin with the sinners, right? Do you know what I'm saying? We have to separate the human from the sin itself and define those two separately, right? Go and sin no more. It's not a message of hate. It's a message of hope, right? A battle plan to get you, to the other side of the wire that Peterson was talking about, the great journey of life.
Unfortunately, Jack, that message is not getting out. The part about go and sin no more. That's missing.
You didn't hear that at St. Patrick's. And look, all of
certainly did not. Yeah.
All of us understand that the people in attendance many of them are tortured, traumatized children who have lost their way. Otherwise, they wouldn't mutilate their bodies and do all sorts of things. They deserve our prayers, but the church doesn't become like them. The church offers them salvation by going and sin no more. We didn't hear that at all from Father Doherty, did we? And
No.
And so that's the message, that it's apparently going to be up to the laity.
Indeed. And, we've got to love them enough, people with same-sex attraction, even those in the transgender community, to tell them that the behavior they're doing is harmful. It's harmful for them. It's harmful for their eternal salvation. And it's also harmful for society. And so if we love them enough to tell them that, we're not going to get the standing ovation. We might get booed and we might get attacked. But that's all about the take up your cross daily and follow me that Jordan Peterson was pointing to.
That's right.
It's been amazing to be with you guys. So we'll sign off here, but God bless you all. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
God bless you, everyone. And we'll see you next time on Faith and Reason. Hi, everyone. This is John Henry Weston. We hope you enjoyed this program. To see more like it, be sure to hit the subscribe button below to get all the latest content from LifeSite News. Check the links in the description to read more and connect with us on social media so that you can stay up to date with all the latest life, family, faith, and freedom news. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.